When I was in my early 20s, I had one goal: to build something that would last. I spent years working long hours, saving every penny, and learning everything I could about the construction business. By the time I was in my mid-30s, I had built a company that specialized in luxury real estate development. It was my pride, my proof that hard work and discipline could turn nothing into something great. But what's success without someone to share it with? I had money, stability, and a comfortable life, but no one to come home to. Then I met Sophia. She wasn't just beautiful. She was sharp, efficient, and had a quiet strength that intrigued me. I had hired her as a bookkeeper to handle my company's finances, but after months of working together, I found myself looking forward to our interactions. We started off professional, but soon, the late evenings in my office turned into casual conversations, and casual conversations turned into something more. I made the first move. "Let me take you to dinner," I said one evening after we wrapped up our quarterly financial report. She hesitated for a moment, then smiled. "Are you asking as my boss or as a man?" "As a man." That dinner turned into another, then another, and before I knew it, I was deeply in love. Sophia was everything I had wanted in a partner: kind, responsible, and a mother to a teenage son named Ryan. She told me up front that Ryan's father, Jason, was still in the picture but had been unreliable for most of Ryan's life. "He shows up when he wants," she admitted. "Makes promises he can't keep. But Ryan loves him, and I don't want to take that from him." I understood. I wasn't looking to replace Jason. I just wanted to be a positive presence in Ryan's life. When Sophia and I got married, I promised myself that I would treat Ryan like my own. I would give him the stability and opportunities that Jason had failed to provide. At first, things were great. Ryan was polite, well-mannered, and seemed to appreciate my efforts. I bought him everything he needed: new clothes, the latest gadgets, and even took him on vacations he never would have experienced otherwise. I attended his school events, supported his interests, and made sure he never felt like an outsider in our home. I thought I was building something real, a foundation of trust and love. But looking back now, I see that I was the only one trying to build anything. The cracks were there, small at first, barely noticeable. A dismissive tone when I offered advice. A hesitation before he called me dad. Little moments where I felt like I was standing just outside the circle of their world, an observer rather than a true part of their family. Then came the real test. Jason started showing up more often, and that's when everything started to fall apart. Looking back, I should have seen the signs earlier. The small, almost imperceptible moments that hinted at what was to come. It wasn't a sudden explosion, not one single event that changed everything. No, it was more like slow erosion. Subtle at first, then undeniable. At the beginning of our marriage, Ryan was polite, even warm toward me. He didn't call me dad, but I didn't expect him to. I knew that kind of bond took time. I didn't force it. I just showed up. I was there, at his basketball games, at his school events, at the dinner table, ready to listen. I made sure he never wanted for anything. When his friends had the newest sneakers, I made sure he did too. When he needed a new laptop for school, I bought the best one on the market. At first, it seemed like we were building something real. He thanked me. He smiled when I surprised him with gifts. He even confided in me about things from time to time. But then Jason started showing up again. I had heard enough about Jason before ever meeting him. A man who lost custody due to recklessness, a history of drinking, and financial instability. He had burned through every opportunity Sophia had given him when they were together, leaving her to raise Ryan practically alone. The only reason he was still in the picture at all was because Sophia believed Ryan deserved to have a father, even if that father was unreliable at best and a ticking time bomb at worst. At first, Jason's appearances were few and far between. A phone call every now and then, a visit on birthdays, a message on Christmas that always contained some vague promise. "I'll make it up to you, son. Just wait and see." It didn't take much to see the pattern. He'd reappear when he felt guilty or nostalgic, make a few promises, disappear when it was time to actually be a father. And yet, Ryan idolized him. I tried not to take it personally. Of course he wanted his father's approval. Every boy does. Even a man like Jason, a man who had abandoned him more times than I could count, still held a place in Ryan's heart. The first time I met Jason was at one of Ryan's basketball games. He strolled in during the second quarter, late, disheveled, smelling faintly of alcohol. He plopped down next to Sophia, nodded at me once, barely acknowledging me, then spent the entire game whispering in Ryan's ear, making him laugh at jokes I wasn't in on. When Ryan scored a basket, Jason cheered like he'd been there all along. Like he'd been there for every game, every late-night practice, every early morning drive. Ryan beamed at him, soaking in the attention. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I was overthinking things. Jason showing up every now and then didn't change the fact that I was the one who had been raising Ryan for the last few years. But it did change something. The shift was small at first. Ryan's excitement when I surprised him with something started fading. The conversations that used to flow so easily between us became shorter. One-word answers. Shrugs instead of actual responses. Then came the comparisons. Jason said he's going to take me to a Lakers game next time he's in town. Jason says he used to be really good at basketball when he was younger. Jason thinks I should get into business instead of going to college right away. Jason this. Jason that. I bit my tongue. It wasn't a competition. At least, I didn't want it to be. But how do you compete with someone who doesn't actually have to do the hard work? Jason could swoop in, play the role of fun dad, and then disappear before any real responsibilities set in. And every time he did, Ryan pulled further away from me. I tried talking to Sophia about it. I get it. I told her one night as we sat in bed. You want Ryan to have a relationship with his father. I respect that. But Jason is in and out of his life on a whim, and every time he shows up, it's like I take 2 steps back with Ryan. Sophia sighed, rubbing her temples like she'd heard this 1,000 times before. What do you want me to do, Daniel? Tell Jason he can't see his own son? At the very least, set some boundaries, I said, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. He can't just show up whenever it suits him, make a bunch of empty promises, and then disappear while I'm the one left picking up the pieces. Sophia shook her head. Ryan is old enough to decide for himself what kind of relationship he wants with his father. I don't want to be the bad guy, and I don't think you should be either. I looked at her then, really looked at her. She didn't want to be the bad guy. That was it. She didn't want to be the one who had to tell Ryan the hard truth, that his father wasn't dependable, that he was selling him a fantasy, that the only man who had ever been there for him was the one he was pushing away. So instead of doing the hard thing, she chose to do nothing. I should have known then that I was on my own. I let it go. What choice did I have? But things didn't get better. They got worse. Ryan started acting out in small ways. Coming home late without an explanation. Rolling his eyes when I gave him advice. Ignoring me at dinner. Then one night, after Sophia and I had gone to bed, I heard him talking to someone on the phone. Yeah, man, I know. He's always acting like he's the boss of me. Like, just because he makes money, he thinks he can control my life. But he's not my real dad. He's just the guy my mom married. I stood outside his room, frozen in place. I was just the guy his mom married. Not his father. Not even a stepfather. Just some guy. And the worst part? Sophia never corrected him. That was the moment I realized. No matter how much I gave, no matter how much love or effort or money I put into this family, I would always be second place. And second place meant nothing. So I made a decision that night. I wouldn't push anymore. I wouldn't beg for his respect. I had spent years trying to build something real, and all I had to show for it was a child who saw me as nothing more than a wallet and a wife who refused to stand beside me. I had one last fight left in me. One last attempt to do right by Ryan. And if that failed, then I would finally let go. When Ryan's 18th birthday was approaching, I decided to make it an event he'd never forget. It wasn't just about the party. It was about showing him, one last time, that I was there for him, that I had always been there for him. I rented out the Grand Sterling Hotel, one of the most luxurious venues in the city, with a rooftop terrace that overlooked the skyline. No expenses were spared. A private chef, a live DJ, an entire section dedicated to a custom ice sculpture bar where mocktails would be served. Sophia thought I was going overboard. Are you sure about this? She asked as I finalized the plans. Ryan would be happy with something simple. He deserves something big, I said. It's his 18th. It only happens once. What I didn't say was that I was trying to close the distance that had been growing between us. The night of the party, I made sure everything was flawless. The catering was top tier, the music was perfect, and the decor was sleek and elegant. The kind of party that most teenagers could only dream of. Ryan arrived wearing a custom suit I had taken him to get tailored just a few days before. He looked sharp, confident. "Wow," he had said when he first walked into the venue, his eyes widening at the setup. "This is insane." I felt a flicker of satisfaction. Maybe, just maybe, this would be the night things finally felt normal again. And for a while, everything went smoothly. Ryan was laughing with his friends, taking photos, soaking in the attention. Then Jason showed up. I should have expected it, but I had specifically told Sophia that Jason wasn't invited. He hadn't contributed to this party. He hadn't been there for Ryan when it mattered. He had no right to waltz in and act like a father when he hadn't been one. But there he was, swaggering into the venue like he owned the place, dressed in a half-buttoned shirt with sunglasses perched on his head, smelling like he had already downed a few drinks before even stepping inside. He didn't even look at me. He walked straight up to Ryan, spreading his arms. "Happy birthday, kid," Jason said, his voice too loud, slurred just enough that I knew he was more than just a little tipsy. Ryan lit up like a Christmas tree. "Dad." That word. That damn word. Ryan hugged him, beaming, completely oblivious to the tension in the room. I clenched my jaw, watching it happen. Watching Ryan act like this man had been there for him all along. As if Jason had done anything more than pop in and out of his life whenever it was convenient. Sophia was across the room. She saw Jason. She saw the way I was staring. But she said nothing. I walked over, keeping my voice calm, controlled. "You need to leave," I said, standing beside Ryan. Jason turned to me then, flashing that mocking grin. "Relax, man," he slurred. "I'm just here to wish my son a happy birthday. I'm his father. I don't need your permission." "This isn't about permission," I said evenly. "This is Ryan's night. You're drunk. You're causing a scene." Jason scoffed. "Causing a scene? I just got here. You're the one always trying to push me out of my son's life." Ryan frowned, his expression shifting. "Why can't he stay?" he asked, looking at me like I was the bad guy. "Because he's not supposed to be here," I said. "He wasn't invited." Ryan took a step back, his jaw tightening. "Wow, real nice, Daniel." And just like that, I wasn't his stepfather. I wasn't the man who had raised him. I was just Daniel. Jason grinned, sensing the shift in Ryan's mood. "See? This is what I mean. You always act like you own him, like you bought him. But you can't buy family, buddy." I exhaled sharply, willing myself to stay calm. This wasn't the time to fight. Not here. Not at Ryan's party. Jason, of course, had no such reservations. He grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and chugged it. "I'll tell you what, though," Jason said, voice loud enough that people started watching. "You sure like to throw money around. Look at all this. Fancy hotel. Fancy food. Trying to impress him, huh?" Ryan shifted uncomfortably, glancing around. His friends were watching. "Jason, stop," Sophia finally spoke up, but her voice was too soft, too weak. Jason ignored her. His attention was all on me. "You know, I remember when you first started sniffing around Sophia," he said, grinning. "Took you long enough to marry her, huh? I always wondered why a guy like you would want to raise another man's kid." I could feel my patience snapping like a thin wire stretched too far. "Jason," I said quietly, "I'm asking you nicely. Leave." He laughed. "Or what?" Before I could respond, he grabbed a plate of hors d'oeuvres from the table and flung it to the ground. The crash silenced the room. Then another plate. A champagne glass. A full bottle of wine. I barely moved, but my security team did. They were already approaching, ready to escort him out. Ryan was horrified. His friends stared, some of them filming. "You're embarrassing yourself," I said coldly. Jason lunged at me. Security was faster. They grabbed him, twisting his arms behind his back as he struggled. "Get your hands off me," Jason yelled, thrashing. I turned to Ryan, keeping my voice calm. "This is the man you wanted here tonight?" Ryan looked away. Security dragged Jason out the doors, his screams fading as they disappeared down the hallway. I turned to Sophia. She didn't meet my eyes. The music restarted. The guests pretended like they weren't rattled. But the party was ruined. Ryan barely spoke to me for the rest of the night. And when we got home, he didn't say a single word. Not thank you. Not, I'm sorry. Nothing. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I finally understood something. No matter what I did, no matter how much I gave, I would never be enough. And that realization? It was the beginning of the end. The morning after Ryan's birthday party, the house was silent. I woke up early, as I always did, and made coffee in the kitchen. Normally, I'd hear Ryan moving around upstairs, or Sophia humming softly as she scrolled through her phone. But today, the silence was heavy. It wasn't hard to guess why. Jason's drunken outburst had turned what should have been a milestone celebration into a disaster. Instead of ending the night surrounded by friends, laughing and making memories, Ryan had spent it humiliated. His guests had left early. His Instagram-perfect birthday had been ruined. I didn't regret what happened. Jason had deserved to be thrown out. But I did regret one thing, that Ryan was blaming me instead of him. I heard footsteps. Ryan entered the kitchen, his face blank, his movements sluggish. He barely looked at me. "Morning," I said, setting my coffee down. "How are you feeling?" "Fine," he muttered, going straight to the fridge. He grabbed a juice, barely acknowledging my existence. I watched him for a moment. I had spent the past 5 years trying to be the best stepfather I could be, supporting him, encouraging him, showing up for him. And yet, here we were. He wouldn't even look at me. "Listen," I said carefully, keeping my voice calm, "about last night." "I don't want to talk about it." He cut me off, finally looking up, his expression cold. I exhaled slowly. "I know you're upset, but Jason—" "You didn't have to kick him out," Ryan snapped, slamming the juice bottle onto the counter. "You made everything worse." I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. "He was drunk, Ryan," I said evenly. "He was throwing things. He embarrassed you, in front of your friends. That was your father's fault, not mine." Ryan scoffed. "You always do this. You act like you're the hero, like you're the only one who gets to decide what's best for me." I took a deep breath, willing myself to stay calm. "You think letting a drunk man destroy your birthday party would have been the better option?" Ryan crossed his arms. "Maybe if you didn't try to replace him, he wouldn't have been so pissed off." I felt something inside me snap. "Replace him?" I repeated, my voice quieter now. "Ryan, I've spent the past 5 years making sure you never had to worry about anything. I've given you everything I could, not because I wanted to replace Jason, but because I wanted you to have a real father figure. Someone stable, someone reliable." Ryan shook his head, his jaw tightening. "You can't buy that. You think just because you have money, you get to control everything?" His words stung more than I cared to admit. That was when I realized he saw me the same way Jason did. Not as a father, not even as a stepfather, just a man with money, and nothing more. I didn't argue anymore. I just picked up my coffee and walked out of the kitchen. That was the turning point. After that, everything changed. Before, Ryan had at least pretended to respect me. Now, he didn't even try. At dinner, he'd barely say 2 words. If I asked him a question, he'd grunt in response. When I told him to clean up after himself, he'd act like he hadn't heard me. Sophia noticed. Of course, she did. But she did what she always did. Nothing. One night, I finally brought it up. "Ryan's attitude is getting worse," I said as Sophia and I got ready for bed. Sophia sighed, rubbing lotion into her hands. "He's just processing things." "Processing things," I repeated. "Sophia, he acts like I don't exist. Like I'm the enemy." She didn't say anything. I kept going. Every time I try to talk to him, he shuts me out. He listens to Jason over me. "And you?" I turned to her, frustration rising. "You don't say a word." Sophia closed her eyes, exhaling through her nose. "What do you want me to do, Daniel? Force him to like you?" "No," I said, "but I expect you to back me up. To tell him that Jason's actions weren't okay. To remind him that I've been the one raising him, not Jason." She shook her head. Ryan's almost an adult. He's figuring things out for himself. He's not a little kid anymore. I let out a bitter laugh. So that's it? You're just going to let him treat me like this? Sophia sighed again, this time with more frustration. I'm not taking sides, Daniel. And that was the moment I realized. She already had. The next few weeks were hell. Ryan made it his personal mission to test me. It was in the little things at first. Leaving his dishes in the sink instead of washing them. Letting the trash overflow. Blasting music late at night when he knew I had an early morning. Then it escalated. One day, I walked into the living room and saw him sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. Ryan, I said, the trash needs to go out. He didn't look up. Ryan. Nothing. I walked over and stood in front of the TV. Take out the trash. He finally looked up, eyes full of resentment. You're not my dad, he said flatly. I stared at him, letting the words settle in the air. I nodded slowly. Understood. Then I took out the trash myself. It was exhausting. No matter what I did, I was the bad guy. If I tried to discipline him, I was being controlling. If I let things slide, I was being weak. And Sophia? She was always neutral. Give him space, she'd say. He's just being a teenager. But I knew the truth. Ryan didn't see me as his father. I had spent 5 years trying to prove myself. 5 years investing in a child who never wanted me in his life in the first place. And for what? For this? For silence at the dinner table? For an ungrateful kid who rolled his eyes when I spoke? One night, I was working late in my office when I overheard Ryan talking on the phone. He acts like he owns me, Ryan was saying. Like, just because he pays for everything, he gets to boss me around. But he's not my dad. He's just some guy my mom married. I sat there, staring at the blueprints in front of me, feeling nothing. I had spent years trying to be a father to this boy, trying to earn his respect. But he had already made up his mind about me a long time ago. I wasn't his father. I was just some guy. And for the first time in years, I wondered, why the hell was I even trying anymore? Graduation day. It should have been a moment of pride, a milestone marking the start of Ryan's future. Instead, it felt like just another day where I had to prove myself to a kid who never saw me as anything more than a walking ATM. I still went all out for him. I still played the part of the supportive stepfather. I arranged a grand graduation party at our house, complete with catered food, decorations, and a surprise gift that I thought would make him finally appreciate everything I had done. A brand new luxury car. It wasn't just a car, it was a symbol, a final gesture, a way to say, despite everything, I still see you as my son. I should have known better. The ceremony itself was fine. I sat beside Sophia in the auditorium, clapping politely as Ryan's name was called. He looked good in his cap and gown, smiling and waving to his friends. For a moment, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, things were turning a corner. Maybe he'd look at me today and realize, this is the man who raised me, the man who's been there every single step of the way. Instead, as soon as we took pictures outside, Ryan walked straight past me to Jason. Jason, of course, had shown up late, disheveled, slightly flushed, but sober, for once. Ryan hugged him, laughed at whatever joke Jason whispered in his ear. He hadn't even said a proper thank you to me yet. And Sophia? She just stood there, watching, not correcting him, not reminding him who had paid for his education, for his clothes, for the very roof over his head. Just standing there. We got home an hour later, and the party began. Ryan's friends arrived, buzzing with excitement. The music was loud, the atmosphere celebratory. I tried to push the earlier moment out of my head. This was for Ryan, not for me. I made sure his favorite foods were served, steak sliders, truffle fries, and that absurd 3-tiered chocolate cake he had begged for weeks ago. For the first time in a long time, I saw him smiling, laughing, acting like the kid I had once known. And for a brief, fleeting moment, I thought, maybe this will be the day we finally connect again. Then his phone rang. Ryan stepped out of the house to take the call. I didn't think much of it at first, until he came back inside grinning. My dad's coming over, he announced, his voice filled with excitement. The room went quiet. Some of his friends exchanged glances, already remembering the disaster of the birthday party. Sophia, as usual, said nothing. I put my drink down, inhaling slowly. No, he's not, I said, keeping my voice calm. Ryan frowned. He just wants to congratulate me. I shook my head. After what happened at your birthday party. You seriously think it's a good idea to let him come here again? Ryan's entire demeanor changed. Why do you always do this? He snapped. Why do you always act like you're in charge of my life? I clenched my jaw, refusing to lose my temper. I'm not acting like anything. But Jason has never shown up sober to an event in his life, and I'm not about to have him ruin another important night. Ryan glared at me, and then, in front of everyone, he said the words that I will never forget. You're not my real dad. You are nothing to me. You are nobody. Silence. All his friends looked away, awkward, shifting in place. Sophia finally opened her mouth, but not to correct him, not to defend me. Ryan, she said softly, let's not fight right now. That was it. That was all she had to say. Ryan, still fuming, turned back to his friends with a bitter laugh. Let's go somewhere else, he muttered. I don't want to celebrate in his house anyway. His house. Not ours. Not the home I had built for him. The home I had paid for. His. And just like that, Ryan and his friends left. No apology. No hesitation. Just walked out the front door, leaving me standing there, surrounded by empty plates, uneaten food, and a house that suddenly felt suffocatingly quiet. I don't remember much of what happened after that. I sat down at the dining table, staring at the perfectly plated dishes that no one had eaten. The cake, untouched. The decorations, meaningless. All that time, effort, and money, wasted. Sophia sat across from me, playing with her napkin. I waited for her to say something, to acknowledge what had just happened, to tell me she understood how much that had hurt. Instead, she sighed. You didn't have to throw the house and money in his face, she said, her voice flat. I blinked at her. Slowly. What? You didn't need to remind him that you pay for everything, she continued, still not looking at me. That was low. I laughed. A cold, empty laugh. That's what you got out of this? I asked. That's your takeaway? Sophia finally looked up, her expression neutral. You're the adult here. You should have handled it better. I stared at her, suddenly realizing something. It wasn't just Ryan. She had never been on my side. Not once. Not when Jason embarrassed me. Not when Ryan started disrespecting me. Not when I had spent 5 years trying to be the father Jason never was. No. Sophia had always been neutral. And in doing so, she had chosen her side a long time ago. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant sound of a car engine pulling up outside. Jason was here. Ryan had gone to him. I didn't get up. I didn't check to see if he was drunk. I didn't care. I just lay there, listening to Sophia breathing beside me, wondering why I had spent so many years giving everything to a family that had never seen me as their own. That was the night I decided something. I was done. Not just with Ryan. Not just with Jason, but with Sophia too. If she wanted to spend the rest of her life defending a man who had abandoned her, if Ryan wanted to chase the approval of someone who had done nothing for him, then they could have each other. Because I was finally done fighting for a place in a family that didn't want me. And soon, they would understand exactly what that meant. I didn't say much to Ryan after the graduation party. Not because I was angry. Anger would have required me to still care. I was past that. I was past waiting for an apology. Past hoping Sophia would finally stand by me. Past pretending that Ryan would ever see me as more than just some guy his mom married. I was just done. But Ryan? He acted like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just publicly humiliated me in my own home. Like he hadn't walked out on the party I threw for him. Instead, he carried on with his summer like everything was normal. Going out with friends. Coming home late. Ignoring me completely. And then one evening, out of nowhere, Sophia sat down across from me at the dinner table, a careful smile on her face. Ryan got into NYU, she said, as if we were a happy couple discussing our child's future. I didn't look up from my plate. Good for him. She paused, clearly waiting for more. When I didn't say anything, she pressed on. He's really excited, she continued. It's his dream school, you know? I took another bite of my food, chewing slowly. Another pause. Then, finally, she cut to the chase. He's going to need help with tuition, she said lightly, watching me. You know how expensive NYU is. I set my fork down, exhaling slowly. Sophia, I said, my voice calm, say what you really mean. She pursed her lips. Well, we were hoping you could cover it. We. Not Ryan. We. I almost laughed. Ryan couldn't even speak to me like I was a human being, but he sure had no problem sending his mother to ask for my money. I leaned back in my chair, shaking my head. No. Sophia blinked. No? That's right, I said evenly. I'm not paying for Ryan's college. Her expression changed instantly. Daniel, she said, her tone shifting to condescension. Come on. We all said things we regret after the party. Let's not punish him over. I cut her off. I'm not punishing him. I'm respecting his wishes. She frowned. What does that mean? I looked her dead in the eye. He made it very clear that I'm not his father, I said. That I'm nobody to him. So if I'm nobody to him, then my money is nobody's too. Sophia's face went pale. You can't be serious. I nodded. Oh, I'm very serious. He's 18, Daniel, she snapped. You're really going to let a stupid argument decide his future? I let out a dry laugh. You mean the stupid argument where he told me I meant nothing to him? That argument. Sophia's jaw tightened. You're the adult here. You should be the bigger person. I let her words sit for a moment. How many times had she used that phrase? Be the bigger person. When Jason humiliated me at Ryan's birthday party. When Ryan treated me like a stranger in my own home. When I spent 5 years providing for a kid who never respected me. I had been the bigger person for long enough. It's not my job to fix this, Sophia, I said, standing up from the table. You and Jason can figure out how to pay for NYU. I'm out. Sophia did not take it well. Neither did Ryan. The next morning, I came downstairs to find him already waiting for me at the dining table, his arms crossed. You're really not gonna pay? He asked, his voice dripping with disbelief. I grabbed my coffee mug, taking my time before answering. That's right, I said simply. Ryan scoffed. Wow, you're seriously gonna be this petty? I took a sip of my coffee. Petty? I echoed. That's funny, because last time I checked, you made it very clear that I'm not your dad, that I have no say in your life, that I'm nobody. Ryan's face turned red. I didn't mean it like that. Oh. I raised an eyebrow. Then how exactly did you mean it? He opened his mouth, closed it. I smiled coldly. Yeah, that's what I thought. Ryan slammed his fists on the table. You know I need this, he shouted. You think I can afford NYU on my own? I shrugged. Maybe you should ask your real dad for help. His jaw clenched. You're doing this to punish me. I took another sip of my coffee. No, Ryan. I'm just finally listening to you. Ryan's hands curled into fists. You're a piece of shit, he spat. I nodded. And yet, I'm the piece of shit who's been paying your bills for 5 years. He stormed away, slamming the front door behind him. That evening, Sophia made one last attempt. She burst into our bedroom, furious. I'm sick of this, she snapped. You need to stop playing games and pay for Ryan's education. I didn't even look up from my laptop. No. Daniel. I finally glanced at her. You and Jason can figure it out. Her face twisted with rage. You're being selfish. You know we can't afford this without you. I tilted my head. We? I asked. You mean me? Because let's be honest, Sophia, this was never about we. This was always about what I could provide for you and Ryan. She opened her mouth, then shut it. I nodded slowly, setting my laptop aside. Tell me something, I said. If Jason had the money, would you have ever asked him to pay for college? Sophia stiffened. I chuckled. Exactly. You only ever come to me when you need something. She swallowed. Daniel, please. He's just a kid. I shook my head. No, Sophia. He's a man now. And real men face the consequences of their choices. Her hands balled into fists. Then she took a deep breath, straightened her spine, and said the words I knew were coming. If you don't pay for Ryan's tuition, I'm filing for divorce. I smiled. Okay. Her face collapsed. You're bluffing, she said quickly. I shrugged. Try me. She stared at me. Really stared at me. And I saw it. The moment she realized she had lost. I stood up, grabbing my phone. I'll call my lawyer in the morning, I said. Until then, you and Ryan can start looking for a new place to live. She didn't say another word, just turned and left the room, her footsteps heavy. And as I listened to her packing her bags downstairs, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. The next morning, the house was quiet. It wasn't the kind of peaceful silence that comes with a lazy Sunday morning. No, this was the silence before a storm. The weight of unspoken words hung in the air, thick and heavy. I made my coffee as usual, sat at the kitchen table, and waited. I didn't have to wait long. Ryan stomped down the stairs, his face red with fury. Sophia followed behind, her expression a mix of anger and something else, something closer to panic. They had spent all night talking. I had heard their voices through the walls, hushed whispers, desperate pleas. They had thought I was bluffing. Now, they were realizing I wasn't. Ryan planted himself across from me at the table, arms crossed. You can't just kick us out. I took a sip of my coffee. I can, and I will. His hands balled into fists. You're ruining my life. I nodded. I see. And when you told me I was nobody to you, did that not ruin mine? He had nothing to say to that. Sophia tried to step in. Daniel, she started, using that soft, soothing voice she always used when she wanted to manipulate me. Let's talk about this. We all said things we regret. Let's be reasonable. I set my cup down. Now it was my turn. I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. Reasonable? I echoed. You want to talk about reasonable now? After 5 years of me providing for a child who never respected me? After 5 years of Jason humiliating me while you stood by and watched? After Ryan told me to my face that I was nothing to him? Sophia swallowed hard. We were angry. I smiled coldly. No, Sophia, you were honest. She exhaled, running a hand through her hair. Look, I understand why you're upset, but do you really want to throw everything away over this? I tilted my head. Throw everything away? Everything? Tell me, Sophia, what exactly am I losing? She blinked. Love? I continued. Because I don't recall ever feeling loved in this house. Respect? Because I don't think I've ever gotten that either. A family? Because from where I'm sitting, all I've been is a bank account with a pulse. Ryan scoffed, shaking his head. You're being dramatic. I turned to him slowly. Oh, really? And what exactly would you call what you've been doing? His nostrils flared. I didn't ask you to raise me. I chuckled. Cold. Sharp. You're right. You didn't. But you sure as hell had no problem taking everything I gave you, did you? Silence. I stood up, stretching my shoulders. Here's how this is going to go, I said, voice calm. I've already spoken to my lawyer. The divorce papers will be ready by this afternoon. I turned to Ryan, have until the end of the week to figure out where you're going. After that, you're out. Sophia gasped. You can't do this. I can, I said simply. And I am. Ryan stood so fast his chair nearly toppled over. You'll regret this, he spat. You think you're teaching me some big lesson? You're just proving you're a selfish asshole. I smiled. And yet, I'm not the one who just lost everything. His face turned a deep shade of red, and for a second, I thought he might actually throw a punch. But instead, he stormed out, slamming the front door behind him. Sophia looked at me, eyes pleading. Daniel, please. I stared at her. The mother of the child who had disrespected me. The woman who had let it happen. Goodbye, Sophia. She realized, finally, there was nothing left to say. For the next few days, I watched them scramble. Ryan spent hours on the phone, trying to figure out what to do next. Trying to call Jason. Jason, of course, had nothing to offer. No money. No stability. Nothing. Sophia tried one last time to negotiate. If you won't pay for Ryan's tuition, at least give us some time to find a place to live. I shook my head. That's not my problem. She stared at me. like she was looking at a stranger. And in a way, she was. She had never seen me like this, never seen me as a man who wasn't willing to be walked all over anymore. Ryan was even worse. He tried guilt. "You're a horrible person," he hissed one night as he passed me in the hallway. I just smiled. "And yet, I'm the horrible person who kept a roof over your head for 5 years. Imagine that." He said nothing. Because what could he say? He had spent years making sure I knew I wasn't his father. And now? Now, he had exactly what he wanted. By the time Friday rolled around, Sophia and Ryan were gone. They packed their things quietly, without another word. There were no dramatic goodbyes. No last-minute apologies. Just silence. And when the front door shut behind them, I stood in the empty house, staring at the place where Ryan's framed graduation photo used to sit. I felt nothing. Not sadness. Not regret. Just peace. The messages started that same night. First, from Sophia. "We all said things we didn't mean. Please, let's talk." Then, from Ryan. "You're ruining my life. But I guess you don't care, right?" I ignored them. The next day, they turned angry. "You're being unreasonable. You'll regret this when you're old and alone. You think money makes you better than us? You're pathetic." I laughed when I read them, because for the first time in years, I realized something. I had been alone in this house for a long, long time, and it was only now that I was finally free. The house was silent. Not the suffocating silence I had grown used to, the one filled with unspoken resentment and invisible lines drawn between me and the people who had lived here. No, this was a clean silence. A peaceful one. I stood in the living room, staring at the empty space where Sophia's decorative vases used to be. The house felt lighter, as if their absence had lifted an invisible weight I hadn't even realized I had been carrying. For the first time in years, I could breathe. That night, I slept like a man who had just walked out of prison. No tension in my shoulders. No waking up in the middle of the night to the sound of doors slamming or whispered arguments behind closed doors. Just quiet. And when I woke up the next morning, for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone a damn thing. I started making changes. First, I cleaned the house from top to bottom. Not just the usual tidying up, I erased every trace of them. The framed photos of Ryan's graduation? Gone. The expensive leather couch Sophia had picked out? Sold. The clothes they had left behind, the little things that screamed of their presence, packed up and dropped off at a donation center. I even repainted the walls. I needed the fresh start. And once the house was mine again, I realized something. It wasn't the house that had felt empty all these years. It was the people inside it. With the house reset, I turned my attention to myself. I had spent years building a future for people who never truly saw me as family. Years bending over backward, trying to fit into a role they never wanted me in. And now? Now, I was going to start living for me. I took a long vacation, something I hadn't done in years. A first-class flight, a luxury resort by the ocean, days spent doing absolutely nothing except enjoying the fact that I was free. No fights, no stress, no walking on eggshells, just peace. Back home, my business was thriving. I poured myself into it, expanding my real estate development company, closing new deals, pushing forward on projects I had put on hold because I had been too distracted trying to fix a family that never wanted fixing. For the first time in years, I had clarity. No one was leeching off me. No one was manipulating me into being the bigger person. No one was expecting me to fix problems they had created. I was in control of my life again. The first time I ran into Sophia after the divorce, it was at a cafe downtown. She looked different. Not bad, not disheveled. But not the same woman who had once lived in my home, either. She hesitated when she saw me, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup. "Daniel," she said, her voice cautious. I nodded. "Sophia." For a moment, she looked like she wanted to say something else, like she wanted to fix things. But there was nothing left to fix, and she knew it. So instead, she just offered a tight smile, nodded, and walked away. I watched her go, realizing that for the first time in a long time, I felt nothing. No anger, no resentment, just relief. I heard through mutual connections that Ryan was struggling. He hadn't gone to NYU, couldn't afford it. Instead, he was working retail, living in a small apartment with Sophia on the other side of town. He never reached out. Not to apologize. Not to ask for help. Not that I expected him to. I had given him 5 years. He had chosen Jason. And now, he was living with the consequences of that choice. One evening, I sat on my newly furnished patio, watching the sun set over the city. A glass of whiskey in my hand, the distant hum of life in the streets below, and I smiled. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for anyone's approval. I wasn't chasing a family that didn't want me. I wasn't handing over my time, my money, my effort to people who saw me as nothing more than a provider. I was free, and it felt damn good.